Hello and welcome to the first part of the Notes app tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to focus on the UI design for the Notes app that we will be making. And in the following tutorials, we will get working on the local database and integrating that with the UI design code. So to start off with, usually what we do in big projects is have a main.dart file that only contains this void main function. And within that, we call the run app function that's imported from either Cupertino.dart or materials.r or widgets.r, etc. So we call the run app function, and in that we pass in like the base widget that we're gonna create or paint onto the screen. So in our case, I'm just calling it root, but I haven't actually created the root class yet. That's why we have this error here. So what I'm gonna do first is in my lib folder, I'm gonna create a new folder that's called screens. And as the name suggests, it's going to be like all the files that contain our screens. So I'm going to create one that's going to be that home. So in here, let's start with creating the root. So the root will be a stateless widget. So call that root. And then let's just import, let's import materials.dart. So now we have a root folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to return material app. Now in this material app, we're going to have the title. The title is going to be notes. Then we're going to set the debug banner to false. And then we have home, which is going to be the actual like home class that the material app will show. So for that, let's create our stateful widget and call this home. So then we can just call home here. I guess we could const here. Now the next thing that we can do is import the root class here. We can also set up a theme. So I'm gonna pass in theme here. I'm gonna do theme data.dart. But we're also gonna, what we can do is use the copy with function, and that basically copies this theme data.dart object, but then whatever parameters we pass into the copy with will be adjusted. So it will have the same properties as the dark theme data.dark object, but then we'll change specifically the scaffold background color, and we're gonna make this colors black. And I'm just gonna remove that and put that here. Okay, so now we have a base app that has the root, and the root will pass in the home class. So now we just have to set up our home widget. So in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a string, and the string is gonna be called note title. So what this will be, call it my title for now. And the idea here is this variable would represent the title of the note that we will be showing on the main page or the home page. And then the note will be the actual note that's a part of it. After that, what we can do is return a scaffold. So let's delete this and call it scaffold. In the scaffold, we're gonna have a body. And what we're gonna do here is use slivers. Now slivers are a way for you to display a long list of a specific kind of widget, but then it's also scrollable, so you can scroll through that. So what I'm thinking here is we're gonna have a bunch of like cards that you can see, which have your note title and your note in it, and then you can scroll down and see like all the different cards or notes. But then the main thing here for slivers is that you can add a sliver app bar, and that allows you to have the notes be like the title of the app bar, right? But then as you scroll up, you will see that the title slowly or dynamically change from like a big notes, like a big font size to a small font size and be like pinned to the top. So I guess like as you create this, you'll be able to see what I mean. But to start off with, you have a custom scroll view, and you pass in the slivers parameter. And in that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass in first the sliver app bar, like I said, and it's gonna be pinned. So that way, as you scroll down, the app bar itself is gonna stay pinned on the top of the screen and not disappear as we scroll down. We're also gonna make sure that the app bar is elevated and set an expanded height of 160. So the idea for the expanded height is to say that this is how much space the app bar will take up as it's how much space the app bar will take up as we when we first open the app, and then we scroll down, so that space will decrease automatically. In this flexible space, we're going to have a flexible space bar. The title takes a widget, and that widget is going to be the actual text widget with our title in it. So that would be notes, and we're going to set a style. And that's going to be we're going to use the headline 4 style. So to do that, what you do is theme.of context. And then after the parentheses, now we're able to access all the themes that are set in our current app. So in our case, we're going to use the text theme, and specifically we're going to use headline 4. We're going to use copy with, and we're going to copy, and we're going to change the color so that the color is white, or the color is white. Because what happens here is, I think headline 4 is by default black. Now, notice that we have an error here with copy with, and the reason we have this error is because headline 4 is a nullable type. It's a nullable text style. So what happens if headline 4 is null and we call copy with? You can't really call copy with on a null type. So what we do is you can either put an exclamation mark or a question mark. The exclamation mark says that headline 4 will never be null, even though the type is nullable. And exclamation mark says if it is null, then just return null. And we can do that because the style is also a nullable type. So it's better for us to use a question mark in this scenario. Okay, after that, what we're going to do is have the background color set to black. Color set black. And we should be good with the Sliver app bar. So let me just run the emulator, or start it at least. And while that's happening, we can get started on the next part, which is a sliver list. So a sliver list is the actual list of items that we will be seeing. And so in that, it takes a delegate, and a delegate will be a sliver child builder delegate. So this, the sliver builder will take a function that takes in the build context and an index as its parameters. So I'm just going to use this predetermined thing that lets me type it out. So I don't have to type it out, basically. But yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to return a card. And in the card, let's put a comma there. Yes. Okay. So the card is going to have a child, and the child will be a list tile. And in the list tile, we're going to pass in some content padding. And content padding is always going to be edge insets. And in this case, we're going to do symmetric. Symmetric allows us to use horizontal and vertical. So that means the horizontal sides will have the same amount. Vertical sides will have the same amount. So horizontal will be 10 and vertical will be 5. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So after that, we're gonna set the list style to is 3 line, and the reason we do that is that we can access so we can have a subtitle as well. So since it is 3 line, first let's start with the title. The title is gonna be the text class or text widget, and in that we're gonna pass in the note title followed by a style. In this case, our style is just going to be a normal text style. And what we're going to do is set the font size to 30. So let's make this constant. Okay. After that, we're going to have a subtitle, and the subtitle will have a container. And in the container, we're going to have some padding. Again, edge insets. this, and for this we're gonna do edge insets all 5. After that, we're gonna have a child. It's just okay, whatever. And in the child we're gonna use a column. Cool. So in this column, we're gonna have children, and the children will be a container with container, and the child of the container will be a text, and in this we'll have our note. And then we'll also have a style. Style will be text style. Again, text style, and we're gonna set the font size to 25. From there, we also have to set the alignment. So that way, the alignment of the text that we see inside this container will be to the left. So you do alignment dot center left. Now the thing after the container will be a row. Row. And in the row, we're gonna have children again, and the child will be a text widget, and this will be containing the current date. So what's happening right now? Daytime. Okay. Daytime dot now. There we go. To string, and then set a style to it. Style will have a color star gray, and we're going to change the font size as well to 15. So what's happening here is we're using a column first, so that we can have multiple different things stacked. In our case, the things that are stacked will be the actual text or the note, followed by the date time. So actually, in this case, I guess we don't really need the row, because sometimes you might have like the date on one side, and then following the date you can have something else to the right of it. For now, I think we actually wouldn't need this. Let's just remove this widget and only have the text itself. Cool. So let's take a look at what we have so far. So if you can see here, we have the notes, right? And as I said, because it's a sliver, as I scroll up, the notes is going to dynamically change. And notice, since it's pinned, it's going to stay up there. Versus if I change this to false, let's see, where is it? We set this false. Oops. Then as I scroll up, notice how it disappears, right? And so I prefer to have it as true, so I'm going to set it to true here. And that way it's going to stay down. Now notice that there's just like an infinite number of notes. We're going to deal with that later. More importantly right now, I guess we would wrap this in a container. And set the alignment. Oops. Alignment. Center. There we go. Okay, so notice how this date time that we have here looks like really weird and awkward. This is not very ideal. What you want is something that's actually readable. We don't want to display this thing. So what we're going to do is import a package, and it's called the INTL. INTL. And we're going to pass in like whatever the latest state is. Hit Control S. VS Code should automatically run flutterpub.get. Flutterpub get. If for whatever reason you cannot use, it doesn't work, then what you can do is run flutterpub get in your terminal yourself. And after that, if it still doesn't work, then make sure you reload your VS Code window. So what we're going to do is, instead of using datetime now, we're going to use date format, and the format type is going to be Y capital M lowercase d. And then after that, you have to call dot format, or do this dot format. And here we pass in the actual date time, which will be datetime.now. So if we hit Control Save here, now we have something that's more readable, 3/9/2020. Okay, so after this, what we can do is change the sliver child delegate. So that's in here. What I can do is set the child count. So if I set it to 15, now it's only gonna have like 15 tiles, and then it doesn't show. Now, at a later point when we set up our database, this child count is only going to be 1, because I want to build this. What I'm going to use instead of a card is I'm going to wrap the card with a list tile builder, and that will let us make sure we do the right number of children. So, but for now, just so that we can see the motion of the sliver, we can have it as 15. The other thing I'm going to do is create a floating action button, and that will be for the in the scaffold itself. So floating action button. And what we're going to do here is create a floating action button that will have an icon for creating a new note. But for now, we're going to have an on pressed, and that will just be a void function. That does nothing. And then the child will be an icon that takes icons dot edit, and that's basically like the pencil icon, right? And that would look good here because it would just say like, okay, I'm trying to add a new thing, right? You can also use a plus sign if you want, but I feel like the edit one seems a little more fitting in this case. And then we can set the color to colors white, and the background color for this we can set to colors orange. So now if you take a look at this, that's what it looks like, and clicking on it doesn't really do anything, so we're going to change that later. So now that we're done with that, we also have an on pressed function in the list tile. So this tile up there, so it's here on, or sorry, in this case it's on tapped. Yeah, on tapped, we're gonna have a void function for now, because what we're gonna do is have it basically it's gonna reroute from here to the next page, which will be the note page, right? So now we can start creating our notes page. So in the screens folder, we're gonna create notes.dart, and then we're gonna create a stateful widget and call it note. Let's see, and then we're gonna have let's see where this is. All right, and yeah, okay. So I'm thinking note should have its own state for the string that is passed in to be the title and the note title, or sorry, the title and the note. So let's do string note title and string note. And now we have to fix our constructor. And also notice we're saying like this class, since it inherits stateful widget, it has to be final. So we're gonna call final here and final here, or put final there. And then we're gonna do this. We're gonna say this dot note title is equal to an empty string, and then this dot note is equal to an empty string as well. So when we use these curly brackets here, the idea is that when you create a note class, if I do it like here, right, I can pass in these different parameters. If I don't have the curly bracket, then I don't have, like, I can't choose which one I want to pass in. Instead, what's going to happen is I have to pass it in, like it's a required parameter, and I have to pass it in the specific order that the constructor was created in. So I prefer to use this just because I can clearly see in my code, like, what am I actually passing in. But then that means that you need to pass in, you have to set some default value, which is why here we're saying that the note title and the note is just an empty string as default values. If you do not give a default value, you will have to put required in front of this to say that this is a required parameter, and if you don't pass this in, then you won't be able to create the object. But in our case, let's just put it as a default empty string. After that, in our build function, we're gonna return a scaffold. So return scaffold, and in this scaffold, we're gonna have an app bar, and And inside this app bar, we'll have a title. And luckily, title takes a widget. So instead of passing in like just plain text, what we're going to do is add a text field. So that way the title is editable. So in here, what we're going to do is have a controller. And we're going to have to create a controller type. So the type here is text editing controller. So inside this class, let's have final text editing controller. Let's call this title controller. And the reason I have an underscore here is to say that this is a local variable that will not be accessible outside. So let's just do this. And while we're at it, let's create another one that will be our note controller. Equals this. So here, let's pass in the title controller since we're using a title here, or this is the title. And then we can have some decoration, which will be an input decoration. And the reason we're using input decoration is so that we can pass in a hint, and the hint will be title. So the idea here is that when so the idea here is like if there's nothing written in the text field, then it will show title, but once you start typing that, it will like disappear. But here we're gonna just change the font size to 30. So that, and then I have a style here as well, and this is gonna be text style. And we're gonna have the font size for this to be 30. Cool. Now outside of the app bar, we're gonna have a body that's inside the scaffold. The body is gonna have a container. And the reason we have this container is so we can add some padding, but also so that we can have a height. So the padding, I'm just gonna do all instead of the padding of 20. And then we have a height, and this height is going to be double.infinity. So the idea for this is that double.infinity makes sure that the height that the container takes up is going to be as large as possible. So after that, we'll have a child, and the child is going to be a text field again. And this time our controller will be, the note controller. And then we'll have autofocus set to true. So in text fields, focus, let's save this. And then I guess I haven't implemented opening it yet, so we'll go over that later. But when you have a text field, you're going to be typing something. And so when your cursor is like blinking and you're able to type and stuff is changing in the text field, that means that specific text field has focus. If you're typing but nothing's changing and you're not like able to change anything there, it doesn't have focus. So usually when the keyboard is closed, you lose focus, and like or when you click on a different text field, then the one you were typing on before loses its focus. So what we're doing here is setting autofocus to true. That way when you open the notes screen, you will already be opening the keyboard automatically, and the focus will be set to the notes focus. So that way when you start typing, you will be changing whatever the note is first. This is just some this is just to make like the user experience better, so that like it's easier for them. They don't have to like tap unnecessarily, because we already know that they're going to be typing something. So you might as well set the focus to true or autofocus true, so that it automatically focuses there beforehand. Next, we're going to set the cursor color. We're going to do colors.orange. I even set the color to orange before for the floating action button, but we're going to change that soon to Urbana orange, which is like the set university colors. Following that, let's have the keyboard type. There are multiple keyboard types that you can use, and in order to do that, you do text input type. And the one that we're going to use is multi-line. So there are different types. There's like email address, so that will have like the @ symbol. There's like number, which will only show numbers. There's like URL, blah blah blah. We're gonna use multi-line, and that means like at the bottom right, where there normally is like a check mark or like a arrow to like quote unquote submit whatever text you're writing. In this case, we're not submitting anything, so rather we're going to be using the enter key. So that will allow us to like make multiple lines. Then we're going to add some decoration, and in this it's going to be again input decoration. And here we're just going to have a border and set the input border to none. Cool. And with that, we should be set with our notes. So what we can do here now is go into the on tab, and let's actually push this notes page onto the sorry, I'm like saying that wrong. So what we're gonna do is push the notes page on the stack, so that when I click on this, it will push it onto the stack, and I will have the notes page displayed on top. And then when I pop it off, then I'll be back onto my home page. So basically we use the navigator function here. Whoops, navigator, and we do navigator.of context.push. So the way pages work in Flutter is that it's a stack, like I said, and the idea is that as you add a page, you push it onto the stack, and the stack builds up, and then to remove the page, you pop it off the stack, and so then the stack comes back down, and that way we're keeping track of what is at the bottom, what's at the top, and like the order. And so we do that using the navigator of. So here we do navigator of context push, and then we're going to need a route manager. So what we're going to use is material page route. So we pass in material page route, and this will take in a builder. So the builder will have a parameter of context. VS Code's being annoying. Let's call this context. And then we have this. See that. Okay. So in this builder, it's going to expect us to return a widget. So what we're going to return is the note class. So I'm going to do something like this and set this to false. So this is one way that you can do it. Another way is, instead of having like these curly braces and all, is you can just instantly go and do this. Oops. You may have seen this kind of notation in JavaScript, but the idea is basically return the following thing. So in our case, what we're going to do is return note will be note, and note title will be note title. Let's see. All right, and then it's just const. So we have to remove that because we're using variables now. So let's just add some comments here so that this looks a little bit nicer. There we go. And that's about it. So what we're gonna do, we can just like we can just copy this. And paste it into this. But now the note is actually going to be empty. And the reason we make it empty is because we're creating a new note here. So we want the values to be empty. So now if we look here, we have a title. And if I click on this, I have my notes. Now I am passing in the values, but we didn't actually do anything with it. So let's actually figure that out. But actually here, let's do this. Let's set this to 1. So that we have only this. And then when I click on this, it's creating a new one, but obviously it's not going to display here, right? And that's because we don't have any database to keep track of how many things should actually be displayed. But this also works. So let's go back into notes and let's use the note title. What is this? Are we not using this? Okay, not using this. Let's just delete that. Okay. So let's start using note title and note. How we do that is we can call the init state function. So stateful widgets have 3 main functions. There's init state, build, and dispose. Init state is what you call when what's called when the widget is being built. So this is, or rather, right before the widget is built. Then the build function is when it's being built, obviously, and then dispose is when the widget is being destroyed. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to call we're gonna set the values for the strings, or for the for the string. So what I mean by that is, if you see we have title controller and note controller, they have these parameters. So here, let's title controller dot text, or not parameters, sorry, they have these variables called text, and I can manipulate this variable if I wanted to. So I can set this to, like, I don't know, for example, right? It's like I can change the value of this text. But what I'm gonna do instead is set this value to the value that's passed in the note title and the note. But we need to make sure, like, the note title and note is not like empty, right? So, or I guess we can just do it like this here. So we can just do title equals title, or sorry, note dot text is equal to widget. So notice how note title and note are both in, like, the main note class, and where we're dealing with all our, like, building stuff is in the note state class. But since this extends note, what we can do is we can call widget dot note to access this note string right here. So we're gonna say that this is equal to note. Sorry, this should be note title. And then we're gonna do note controller dot text equals widget dot. Cool. So now what should happen is when I click on this, see how it says my title and my note. So if I were to go here and change, like, this value to, like, my notes app, right? Then when I let's restart this. Now when I click on this, it says my notes app here, and notice how I can just change all of this as well. I can change all of this as well, but, like, that's not going to be displayed here because obviously I'm not keeping track of actual state, and to do that we're going to need a database to keep track of what the actual data is. And so that we will do in our next tutorial. Also here, I just realized we should do this for this as well. So that way the cursor color here is orange. And now the last thing I'm going to do is add the colors itself. So in the library folder, I'm going to create something called miscellaneous. And in that, we're going to create a colors.dart file. And in here, the main idea, or the main thing I'm going to do is just add all of the colors that are from the Urbana or UIUC colors. So what I'm going to do is do class color, or sorry, let's do app colors. Let's call it app colors so that we don't confuse it with colors that we normally use. And we're just going to do static constant color. And then let's call this Urbana orange because that's the name of the color. Or set it to color, and you can create colors by passing in values. So the value that we're going to pass in is like this. So 0xFF E for A2. And let's just duplicate this a bunch and change this to primary u of I. This one is 0x ff13294b. And then this is 04554. And this is called secondary u of I. Then we have this one, which is and that is the latest. So, and then the last one is called set this value. Did I do this wrong? FF1 4 F4 6. Oh, I have an extra 4 here. That's why. Yep, that's cool. So now if we just go back into here for this, let's call app colors dot Urbana orange, and then I just closed the one that was going. Okay, in here let's call app colors Urbana orange as well. Orange. Okay. And so now this is actual, like, this is the actual U of I Urbana orange color. Cool. So we're done with this. In the next tutorial, I'll go over creating the actual database. And then following that, we'll probably do like integrating the database with the UI. So yeah, thank you for watching.